draw to a close, and can I invite Andrew Fulton, the Vice President and General Manager of ICL, to talk to us about the world's only polyhalite.
Polyhalite, yes. Marketed as polysulfate. Good afternoon, everybody. I stand between you and a cold Chardonnay, or let me ask the question, since you're visitors, who has tried one of the delicacies of Newcastle Brown Ale? Well, a couple. And then on the subject that we're talking about, who drives an electric vehicle? I would expect you to, sir, yes. And it was good to see the Jaguar highlighted up there. They are fantastic cars. Not on this screen, but on your presentation. So yes, I'm going to be saying a few words about ICL Boulby, which is the first polyhalite operation in the world. Of course, there is a project as well out there, which is currently developing in the northeast to establish a mine to mine a similar mineral from the same deposit laid down 210 million years ago, along with other brines and so forth. And it reaches out under the North Sea and under Europe, so it is quite extensive in resources. So we can state big numbers in terms of what's available down there. But what we've learnt in the transition is actually to classify, like any mining engineer and any resource manager, a reserve is a completely different subject because it's about what's economical, what's achievable, and that comes with a whole lot of needs and challenges, but ultimately through mining engineers, and technical competencies, turning those into solutions. And I'll touch on a few of those lessons along the way. About 2 years ago during our transition, maybe a few more than that, we coined a phrase, respecting the past, living in the present and delivering the future. And it was a good way to help our teams realize that they were making a journey from the way they used to do things to the way they're doing things today, mining polyhalite, because we used to be known as Cleveland Potash Boulby Mine and mined potash for many years successfully. But over a period of time, there was a book, if anybody remembers it, Who Moved My Cheese? The world changed, but we didn't realize it was changing. And the return on investment for exploring and developing new reserves around potash was a diminishing curve. But fortunately, our forefathers and our predecessors working in the organization had identified an opportunity that we've captured today in mining and establishing the world's first. But in that respecting the past, living in the present, and delivering the future, I think it's also akin to what we're standing in today. And I look at the lump of coal to my left-hand side, and I heard earlier, and I can't identify the gentleman then who described it, which is the density or the energy density contained in batteries and so forth. And I need to get my mind around this new density calculation because I know the density of energy of that lump of coal in megajoules per kilogram, but I don't know what it means in batteries. But I will certainly learn more about it because this is about understanding what are the factors that we need to understand that will essentially measure the success of future projects when they're delivering the future, which is around transition to low-carbon energy. But why a fertilizer project in a conversation about energy? Well, we have a solution here to reduce the carbon footprint of the supply chain in the growing of foods, not only through efficiency of growth, but also in the material and the mineral that we mine and supply to the fertilizer market. But before I go on, firstly a word from a parent company, ICL. ICL is the largest company within Israel and is the largest Israeli company by market share on the New York Stock Exchange. So it is global, it is resilient, it's got some strong assets, but also as it's founded within Israel, it's got a really strong startup mindset. And a lot of the new projects coming online are really down the supply chain into retail, sourcing new ways of looking at today's challenges through different eyes, whether it be through investing in young startups or re-establishing old techniques to solve today's problems. And it describes itself here as a specialty minerals company solving many of humanity's sustainability challenges in three distinct realms of agriculture, industrial markets, and in food. And meat is one of the products that ICL create. And just to warm you up and wake you up, I've created a little bit of a video, or I've borrowed the video from the website and it's a nice little touch on what actually ICL do and how it's actually trying, and I heard it earlier, about changing a culture, not only in society, but in your own company. When you have a product like we have in polysulfate, it's setting a new tone. Are your teams, are your employees following suit? Are they linking into that new mindset of establishing solutions for the humankind, but are they also following suit? So here's a little something.
My mom makes sure there are enough fruits, veggies, and cereals all over the world so no one ever goes hungry again. And grows burgers and chicken nuggets that taste like real meat but are not. My mom helps cars become greener. She works in a factory that collects sun rays so we can use them over and over again. My mom invents new things every day to protect us from fires and storms. She recycles even the most unrecyclable things. And helps create magical potions that make us healthy again. My mom works at ICL with other moms and dads from all over the world to make our planet a better place.
So, just the two Union Jacks that you saw there work from Boulby Mine. That's Lewis Darby and Emily Brown. Lewis is an electrician in the processing area, and Emily Brown works for the global procurement team. And they were quite proud to be a part of that video. And it is about that level of engagement that you don't just have with society and other investors, it's actually with your employees as well. So they believe in what you do. And that has been a part of Boulby's success, because it has taken 24 years to reach this point now. And you think 24 years, have you really been in development for that year? Half the life of ICL Boulby, or the Boulby site's life, has been spent thinking or doing things around polysulfate and polyhalite. 24 years ago, it was one of my predecessors that hit the nameplate capacity of potash and said, so what next? What other minerals are there in the ground? And he spoke to a marketing manager at the time, who is now the head of UK sales and marketing, Harold Clark, and he said, something with sulfur in it. I said, why sulfur? Well, there's a diminishing source of sulfur, because sulfur is sourced from fossil fuels, the air pollution from fossil fuels. It enters the soils through rainfall, and since we're burning less coal, there is a deficiency of sulfur in the air and a deficiency of sulfur in land. So he went then, where does a man then go to when he has a concept? He goes to a geologist in the mining world and says, so what do we have? And they said, well, actually, we've got something with sulfur. It's called polysulfate, polyhalite. Where is it? Well, it's just beneath you. It's only 150 meters below the potash. And they said, well, let's go and have a look. And 24 years later, after running some trials at Nottingham University and others and finding that it does stimulate growth, we're now marketing it, and we'll sell this year around about 1 million tons of product that we produce at Boulby. But it's taken also the effort of reusing a lot of equipment that we have from the potash area, learning new techniques. We've got access to the mineral resource, but we're not mining it directly where we were mining the potash. We have to go deeper for it. It is harder. It requires new techniques. A number of you have met Clive Mitchell, and he can go to great lengths to explain the lessons that we have developed, even only over the last 18 to 24 months, never mind the past 24 years, about how it behaves as you mine it at ever-increasing rates, presents those challenges. But at the same time, we also have the finesse and the knowledge in the supply chain around ICL of how to manufacture products, other products, through this as a raw material. So we have a secondary product stream as well, where we don't just take the raw material and sell it, we actually put it into compounds and blends and manufacture products that can meet other fertilizing needs when we blend it with other compounds and other minerals. We have infrastructure, we have a processing plant, we have a deep sea port. There was a mention of PD ports. We're on the other side of the quay from the more recent bulk storage, actually just behind or just in front of the container yard, which I think you might well have been referring to, is the port. We also have a strong supply line through ICL, through the Fertilizer Plus marketing portfolio. And 70% of the Fertilizer Plus products actually contain polysulfate. So it has a route to market through the ICL supply chain. And interestingly, polysulfate has grown its own identifier within the parent company, because there was certainly, like anybody, that doubt. We talk about investors. Even your own parent company has uncertainty about where this might lead them. And only in 2021, polysulfate opened up 6 new countries to ICL that they hadn't previously been selling products to. But, and I'll talk in a moment, what are the drivers of actually initiating and transforming farmers to consider something different? Because it's not easy to convince a farmer to take money out of his pocket and do something different. It takes some influence. We'll touch on that a little bit later. Now, something that I have great respect for at Boulby is the competent workforce, and anybody starting in the resource sector now will have concerns about that supply chain, and I'll touch on a little bit later how collectively we need to be able to solve that. Now, pleasingly, we also have a permitted site. It was mentioned earlier about how we're going to get planning permission, how we're going to get permits. There are means to it, and when with time, but with engagement and local support. And people spoke about how do we actually influence the decision makers in planning. A lot of that actually does come down to your peers saying, we believe in that. There is an economic justification for that concept. If they can mitigate the impacts, then it should be given the green light. And we had a lot of support from regional stakeholders that allowed the national park to consider how this site could fit as a brownfield site, as an existing eyesore, let's say it to the local community, how we could work with them to develop a balanced perspective and get permission for a further 25 years. Not without commitment. We've got investment to make to mitigate some of the impacts that we do make, but it does come with a considerable green light that we are a recognised part of the community. Now, nicely about the supply chain, did you know that polysulfate is the lowest carbon footprint fertilizer of its peers? Because it requires very little mineral processing, in fact, no mineral processing, just a simple crushing and screening process to deliver a raw mineral that hadn't seen the light of day for 210 million years, goes to a farmer's field with only the energy that it takes to transport it. It has revolutionized the supply chain in the food industry, where consumers are now saying, we need to use polysulfate to bring our carbon footprint down. So what does polysulfate do for plants? It does a number of things. It contains 4 nutrients, 4 of the 6 key nutrients: potassium, magnesium, calcium, and sulfur. Basically, potassium is the fuel. Magnesium brings life to the leaves and the greenness and the richness of the leaves. Calcium is about strength, and sulfur is about the ability to be able to convert to proteins, a very, very important element when you are growing food for the food chain, or directly into the human food chain. For cattle feed, protein is key. Directly, if you're creating soybeans, say for human consumption as well, proteins are what everybody wants to have within their food supply. So stimulated by sulfur, and of course it replaces the deficiencies that fields are experiencing now, based on the fact that the Western world is burning a lot less fossil fuels, therefore a lot less sulfur in the air, and you can find a way to replace it using polysulfate. It doesn't need more marketing than that. It's versatile. It is naturally sourced. It does come with some variability, but it comes in a chipped form. It has a high density, which means you have a greater ability to be able to load up bags, load up vehicles with it, and it fires very well out of the back of the fertilizing machinery. It comes in a variety of different sizes. Interestingly, by its natural state, it is a rock. It has a slow release characteristic. It dissolves slowly. In the first 30 days, it releases about 80% of its sulfur, giving the boost to the plants that they require, but continues to deliver sulfur and other nutrients for a further 20 to 30 days thereafter, stimulating, continuing to feed the plant during the second stages and third stages of growth. Which is very important, particularly in very wet regions such as South America, where heavy rainfall will wash a lot of nutrients out of the soils. This retains its nutrients and can continually feed those to the plant over that life cycle. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not only a direct feed, but it's also suitable for blending and for compounds. Now, we think we know something about polysulfates and its benefits. We've done over 800, closing on to 900, and I think even this year would be well over 900 trials. These are on the back of commercial projects and commercial use. This is done by having a foot full of agronomists around the world. And there's nothing better than an agronomist speaking directly to a farmer to help the farmer understand what will benefit his fields, what mix he'll take. Then you need that farmer to use it, because the farmer on the other side of the fence looks over and goes, why is his crops greener than mine? Why are his crops taller than mine? And that's how, by word of mouth, certainly, not only word of mouth, other marketing methodologies and skills and so forth, we've been able to develop the market from zero, not only 5 to 10 years ago, to where it is today. But no lack of effort. It has taken some time around the world, 5 continents, 34 countries. What are the main drivers, and why is polysulfate a developing opportunity? Yes, it's developing. I talked about the challenges that come at opening up a mine. We certainly haven't met all of those points yet. It is not yet a transformation. There is still a journey to go. But the trends are still nonetheless positive. There are trends in the EU. This is converting the farm to fork vision of 25% organic fertilizers by 2030. It is an organic fertilizer. It meets that need. There are a growing demand for green solutions. It is chlorine sensitive. I had a conversation earlier today about soil associations in the past restricting the use of potassium chloride on the likes of tomatoes. Polysulfate, whilst they will and they can use those, polysulfate has a low chloride volume, therefore it is positive for the chloride sensitive crops. Sulfur deficiency I mentioned, and then generally the food quality and consumer preferences. And I think about what is it that we need to do as a society maybe to stimulate consumers into making further choices about low carbon footprint products is maybe further labeling, and that might be a debate that people might be looking for in the future, is labeling products either have high salt or low salt, is what's the carbon footprint of the baby food you buy or the tin of beans that you buy. And is that understood by the consumer, and is it regulated and adequately regulated? And I think that would change and help to develop consumer trends. Now, Boulby as an operation has stood for over 50 years, and we celebrated that success last year, and we made some song and dance about it on behalf of the rest of the industry, but primarily about the employees that have supported us over the years. But I speak about that industry because I think mining still has that sort of that unclear definition to it in the UK. It is odd to me why we have a mining and quarrying sector in the UK when they are both really ultimately the same. But in the UK, we differentiate between the two. The rest of the world don't differentiate between underground and surface. And the mining industry in the UK has still hit with coal stick. Now, respect to coal, and I gave that respect to coal, and I have respect to the coal miners of today in terms of the supply chain for steels and the likes. Also, Aberpergrin as an example. The water that we're drinking today, the chances are that it's been filtered through carbon filters that have received carbon directly from Aberpergrin quality because of the richness and the purity of the coal that they mine. So coal has a part to play. But the industry, the mining industry, is still beaten by mining is dirty, look at coal. But also, in the past, the coal industry used to support technically and operationally and financially the industry. The coal board used to sponsor the papers, used to develop the feedstock of competency, etc. Where are we going to get that today? And that's what the mining industry have been looking at itself from itself in the last few years and thinking, well, we need to address this. We need to grab the nail and say, we're going to take control of our destiny, not rely on the history that used to supply it for us and shed some tears because the coal industry gone and I remember when and so forth. So, we're a member of MORC, the Mining Association of UK. We believe we have a story to tell, but we also believe that together, as a collective group of companies, that through mutual aid and mutual response, we can write the papers, the standards, the expectations for the industry as a whole, not to become self-regulating. There is a strong regulator. There is the HSE. There are other agencies that regulate industries such as us. But particularly for young juniors entering the market, where do they get their references from? They need to know that there's a buoyant, and depth of knowledge within the rest of the sector where they're going to come to. They should be coming to MORC. MORC should be responding to ensure that there is a reference that they can use. Say, how will I build an organisation structure that meets UK regulation? How will I meet planning consent guidelines in a mine, typical mine in the UK? Not only a mine, maybe other mineral extraction projects will look to the same source of information. Now, not only do we network between ourselves, and you can see both large and small in that mix today, but also in our own supply chain. And ABMEC are also keen and passionate about the sector to sell it externally, but also to sell it within the UK. So partnering in a number of activities with ABMEC, we're reinforcing how we do good mining engineering or mechanical mining engineering in and electrical engineering in a mining world. So there is an association, we heard earlier about the strength of associations, about speaking up, but also networking. And one of the other successes of MORC has been the establishment of a competency matrix. So there was a route from somebody leaving school to become a mine manager. In the past, that was sponsored by large groups. There aren't so many large groups there. There was a mutual aid now where a young starter with a couple of years of experience will be able to get exposure on sister companies or peer companies, technical exposure, and return that back to their original employer. The purpose? To uplift the overall competency of the sector. And that creates that collaboration and joint venture and recognition of we're in this together, as was mentioned earlier in some other people's presentations. At the same time, mining, we talked about risk. Emergency response is key in deep level mines. There is also a mutual aid and emergency response where there are provisions and resources provided in case of need. Now, that's the strengths of associations. I had an opportunity in 2021 to speak at the AMP's Living with Minerals Forum, which I think is held annually. But I was asked the question, what policies have provided or are needed to provide a supported regulatory operating and trading environment to encourage investment, trade and export, particularly around minerals. And I included this today because I felt that this is very much a question of this resource group today. What do we need to provide regulatory and an environment such that this can really take off? And there's been that questioning. How do we deal with health and safety and other regulatory bodies? What do they understand about our industry, and are we sharing the common knowledge about what that typical expectation is of that regulatory body, that we are all achieving the same bar, not we spoke earlier, not a stick, but rather a bar that we look to beat. National planning guidelines have been a fear of many. Rest assured, give it time with sensible dialogue and also support of people outside that body to say this is a viable and a reasonable consideration to make. There are means and ways to get around that. Our guidelines are actually quite comprehensive. They're world class. They're also, you can appeal them, but they are world class and they are comprehensive such they are understandable. And that's an advantage. I've worked in other parts of the world where there is just no direction. So establishing yourself in the UK, there are already existing guidelines. We look to enhance them over time and continue to consult on them, but they are an advantage for doing business in the UK, I would say. The businesses, the departments that have been referenced earlier in other people's presentations, how well do they understand the subject? How well do we understand them? Are we helping them to network? And then I put a particular point around competency at the Department of Education, Institute of Apprentices Technical Education, who have worked on the degree apprenticeship, have been key to see that we have the future feedstock. And if it's locally grown, even better. If it's UK grown, okay, and it'll migrate around the country. I'm sure there will be technical experience that we will bring in, but also the mining industry and the UK mining industry has been able to export competencies, and the UK PLC has been able to have a presence around the world by having a strong mining education program. And I ask you to look out for a forthcoming paper which will be presented over the next couple of weeks about the future of the mining engineer in the UK, which will be sent out by a group called the Mining Education Forum, and maybe Peter, through the links, we can send copies of that to people who attended the forum so they can have an insight into what's being said in that particular space. And then lastly, the industry as a body, and it has been fascinating, really enjoyable to hear people talking about their own projects with passion and saying we need to work together because we've got our own internal supply chain. It starts here. Once you establish yourself as a body, or you link into other bodies, how do you work together to collaborate, to create those mutual aids, to speak it up, because nobody else is going to come to your rescue. It's going to be the sector that will build itself. And I felt that Mork really needs to fill that point there. And by linking into the departments, we'll have a set of government advocates that can speak on our behalf. And it was great to hear a number of people referencing those that know this project, that project, your local MP, etc. But absolutely, the industry needs to talk with one voice. And it's great to hear about associations and the likes. And holding these forums allow that to take place. It would be greater to have 2 more tiers or group sets of chairs with other invites here from other sectors. I don't want to think we're just speaking to ourselves, but maybe that's where it starts, to get that confidence to then speak thereafter. Bring them on, yeah. Well, with that sign, I say thank you very much. This is our chap, our miner. He's on the Cleveland Way. It's a beautiful bit of coastline. The Cleveland Way path walks straight past it. We had established by Katie Venturous, a local blacksmith. She manufactured the table and the infrastructure that is in place at the workplaces underground, 6 kilometers out under the North Sea. Typical picture of a miner who sits, takes his instructions, takes his lunch there, has some banter with his mates, and that's where he sets off to go and do his daily work. And it's the mining industry is built on the backs of these guys, and the technology, and the money, and the spirit, and the passion that people have for their sector. Thank you.
Andrew, thank you for that. Has anyone got any questions for Andrew?
I mean, I can see you're exporting a huge amount of material, but I just wondered if you actually sold material in the UK.
Yes, we do. We sell directly the polysulfate, granular and a mini format. Granular goes on to fields of barley, wheat, grasses in the UK. We also sell our manufactured product, Potash Plus, which is a combination of KCl with polysulfate on a 50-50 blend. It's actually a bit of a bridging product. It carries a little bit more potassium with it. Also great for barleys and wheats, particularly also potatoes. And we're watching Wimbledon at the moment. Polysulfate minis are part of the mix within the minerals that lay down on Wimbledon through one of our distribution companies. Wimbledon, which football? I know AC there's Barcelona, Milan. Was Arsenal. I think one of the London clubs also use our products to enrich and make their fields the pitches a little bit greener. So yes, it is sold here. Yeah. And I've drunk a beer that was brewed with barley that was grown with polysulfate, and it was brewed particularly for our site. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. I wouldn't say the beer was wonderful, just the whole story of it was wonderful.
Any more questions?
Dropping this hint about beer.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much for taking the graveyard slot, which is not everyone's favourite slot, with such energy and telling us all about ICL and your project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to make a few closing remarks. When getting off the train yesterday, I was struck just in the sort of 2-minute walk to the hotel. It was slightly longer than that. The great heritage there is up here in the northeast. And then that was reiterated this morning with one of the first lines about the new green industrial revolution. So I'm sure you'll all have taken away from today lots of different things. We've had some very wide-ranging subjects. For me, some of the things that it's made me think about is just scale. From the wind turbines, the height of the Shard, which is just mind-blowing, to the size of investment required in some of these projects. 6 billion, 9 billion. The amount of money that's going to have to be invested. Partnerships is obviously going to be really important, and I suppose hopefully out of today there will have been some great networking opportunities which will help start some important partnerships. The geopolitical situation, I think, China's grab for, for these rare earths and what's happening in Ukraine makes us realise that we need to really think geopolitically about what we need to do. So I think that's another important factor that's come out of the day. I think we saw from Henry's passion talk about government's commitment to the northeast and these these new technologies for the green industrial revolution. So I think it just remains for me to say thank you, Stuart, for the idea which you first mooted in October, and it's amazing to think that here we are in a building of such sort of heritage for what hopefully is the sort of the start of the next industrial revolution. So thank you. And thank you so much to Terry and Emily, who've really made today happen, and for everything that they've done to make today such a success. So thank you. One set of people I've forgotten to thank, of course, because it always happens, are the speakers who've made it such an interesting day. Without you, this day wouldn't have happened and been what it is. And I think it really has been, from the feedback I've got, everyone's found it really valuable to get these different points of perspective of what's going on. So thank you all for the time and effort you put into being here today and speaking.